Hi, welcome to Business Influencers. I'm your host, Chris Salem. Hope all is well with you. Again, you found us here at TALRadio, and we hope that you're enjoying the many great shows that are on the TALRadio platform. Business Influencers now has been here for over 3 years. And again, the show continues to grow because of you, the listener. And if you are new, welcome. Again, we bring in subject matter experts from all different levels of business and experience to share their words of wisdom to help elevate your level of influence in taking your business to the next level. If you'd like to see more content that has not been covered here on the show, feel free to reach out to us here at chris@christophersalem.com, and we'd be more than happy to look at that content for a future show. Today's show is being brought to you today by Alumni Direct. Alumni Direct is a new social media community platform dedicated to bringing alumni together from all different generational types and an opportunity to meet new people for the first time. Now, this is a membership program taking out all the noise out of social media. No more of those noisy notifications. You get to come in and generate genuine and authentic connections with the people you choose to interact with, and you will be also available to you will be a wide array of different resources and services not available to the general public. If you'd like some more information about Alumni Direct, check them out at alumnidirect.com. That's alumnidirect.com. Well, we got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking about building a tech empire from scratch. Yes, we're going to be talking about bootstrapping success in the digital ad space. And we are going to be here with someone that's been in the industry for quite a long time with a lot of experience. So you're going to be in for a treat in terms of the information that he'll be sharing. We're going to be talking with Rich Kahn. He's a chief executive officer of Anura and an authority in digital ad fraud protection with 31 years of experience in digital marketing. In the past 30 years, he's created 5 multi-million-dollar internet companies, all self-funded. That's what we're going to be talking about today, with one even achieving a spot on the Inc. 5,000 list for 5 consecutive years. And he was even featured on CNN for this insights. Now, Rich's venture into ad fraud prevention started with his personal encounter with its harmful effects. And as a co-founder of Ezanga, a marketing company, he observed how fraudulent clicks and bots would deplete ad budgets and skew campaign data. Now, he's going to be sharing a lot of insights from his experience and why he launched Anura as a result of this to take on this particular issue. So he'll be sharing a lot of insights here on today's show. And without further ado, we welcome Rich Kahn to the show. Rich, how you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me today.
Yes. So let's just talk a little bit about, as we talk about building a tech empire from scratch, I always like to kind of start like let's go back 30 years ago, if you like, what got you into this space and what was the purpose of, starting what you did with your first company and where you are today with Anura?
Well, I've been entrepreneurial for a long time prior to the internet. I even built what they called bulletin board systems back in the day on ARPANET, which was the predecessor or the precursor to the internet. But starting in 93, okay, so the internet was rolled out to the public in, I believe it was September 1st of 1991. At least that's the date that I can find on the internet. And in 93, I started my first internet digital marketing company. And it was very simple. I wasn't set out to do that, right? That's how a lot of these companies are started. I set out to basically, I was enthralled with the internet that was changing, and it was changing so rapidly. And it was very command line driven environment when it first came out. There was no point and click, no web browser. It was, everything was command line driven. But I was just hooked. The fact that I can communicate to servers across the globe instantly at any time that I wanted to without having to dial a modem, because that's typically how you got on the internet. It was all online internet at the time. So I decided, and I am not a writer, but I decided to write a newsletter.
That's me. I'm a speaker, not a writer.
So I figured, I was going to write this newsletter, and anything that I learned that week on what the internet was doing and changing and new places to visit, things that you can connect with, I was going to write about. And I hung out in some AOL news groups and said, hey, I'm putting together this newsletter talking about well, the changing internet. If you're interested, send me your email address and I'll be happy to include you in the newsletter. It was a free newsletter. And in 6 months, I had over 20,000 opt-in subscribers, which back then was, I didn't realize how awesome that was back then, but back then that was pretty awesome. And then as 6 months into it, we broke our 20,000 member. We're doing all kinds of stuff. We One of my clients, one of my readers reached out and said, "Hey, is there any way I can advertise in your newsletter?" And that started that first internet business. Small company, but once announcing, "Hey, you can now advertise in the newsletter," we're making a couple $1,000s a week. As a startup company with no costs other than some time, and most of the research came from just my natural curiosity as to what was going on. That's kind of started that whole thing, and it kind of blossomed from there. Everything just kind of evolved from one business to the next business without any grand master plan.
Well, I love it. But now, along the way, you saw this challenge, this issue with ad fraud, and so talk about like that. And I'm sure that obviously that's evolved over time as the technology has evolved. So has these hackers and people that do what they do in terms of how clever they've become in doing so. So if you could share some insights to that, I think that would be quite valuable to people listening and how that relates to their business and how they can turn challenges into opportunities into now
Sure.
better results.
Yeah. So, all right. So I started my first internet business in 93. I started Ezanga, which was an ad network. Think of Google, much smaller. So significantly smaller, more nichey, but it was all text-based ads. And we started that, my wife and I started that in 2003. And late 2004, we got some issues coming across the internet from some of our clients that they were seeing some oddities in the traffic. Nobody knew what to call it. Nobody knew what it was. So I started researching it, looking at the data, and realized, okay, I've seen this before. It's fraud. So I remember distinctly telling my wife, look, I don't want to be the guy solving fraud. I just want to go license a solution, bolt it on, and call it a day. Well, in 2004, going into 2005, there wasn't any licensable technologies to do fraud detection. In fact, the first one didn't come out until 2008. So as a developer, I have a problem. My clients are complaining. I solved it myself, and I wrote some code to solve it. And it was great. But it needed evolution because obviously, as technologies evolve, so does fraud evolve. So we continued to evolve it. And 10 years later, we looked at, we had so many customers asking to license our technology outside of our ad network because initially that's the only way you can get access to it. So we did some research, compared our technology versus some of the other technologies that were out at that time, and realized we had a better solution. And that's when we decided to spin it off into its own technology platform.
Wow, I love that. So in this case, again, you recognized a problem, a challenge, and then you were able to come up with a solution to that. Would you say that, like if any organization, regardless of where they are, even a small business that's desiring to turn that business into an empire, so to speak, whatever an empire means to them, and they've done this from scratch, that challenge that there's got to be a challenge that has to be better and it has to be filled with the solution. Do you feel like the companies that or the businesses that dedicate themselves to getting better at that are the ones that are going to see the biggest growth in whatever business they're in?
Well, you got to look at it this way. If you don't have challenges in business, you probably don't have a business, right?
Yeah.
Every business has challenges. And it's just a matter of what's the most pressing challenge at the time, right? So maybe it's, well, how do I get more customers? Maybe it's, how do I make the product better? There's always some type of challenge you're trying to solve as an owner. But yeah, ultimately, like I said, if you're building a company and you're reaching these challenges and solving these challenges, that's really how you grow as a company, is by solving one challenge and then going to the next challenge. Um, Over 30 years, you've seen tons of different challenges across the way. And, depending on your skill set, you find unique ways of doing it. Now, I have a couple friends that have businesses that are not technical, not developers like myself, and run into problems, but they're able to think through the solution as far as what they want, and then they can hire somebody to actually write the code to do the problem, to solve the problem. And I always tell people from a development standpoint, if you can think of it, if you can conceptualize, a solution to a problem, it can be written in code. There's
Yeah.
nothing you can't write in code. It just comes down to the expense. How much is it
Yeah.
going to cost to build? How much is it going to cost to run? And are you willing to accept those expenses in putting it together? So that's kind of how I look at it.
Got it. Got it. And like you said, I mean, it's all it values in the eye of the beholder and so on. What would you share, as, over your 30 years, Rich, when you look at building a tech empire, you mentioned about challenges. Challenges are inevitable. They're going to be beyond our control, but we have to embrace them. Whether if it's our own challenges in growing our own business or helping our customers to grow by getting through their challenges and offering better ways to navigate through that and providing solutions to do that. What would be some of the things you can share with those listening that will help them to take wherever they are in their business to that next level? What are some of the things they should be considering as part of the long-term plan?
So when you're looking at the long-term plan, somebody once told me what you try to do is plan your company today so that next year your company would put your current company out of business,
Mm,
right? So what can you do? What can you innovate? What can you change? How do you grow the company at a different level? How do you drive in clients from new channels? Always constantly thinking of, what can you do to significantly improve the company to the point that the new company will outperform the old company.
yeah,
So if you think of it that way, any business owner, if you talk to any business owner, they should know what the problem is that they're having right now, that challenge.
absolutely.
And
And would it be safe to say, Rich? I mean, what I've seen is as you continue to grow, you can't become complacent. It's not like, hey, this is how we've always done it. I've always used to hear that term from a lot of, especially corporations. This is how we've always done it. Well, that just because it worked back then doesn't mean it's going to work again in the future. So we always have to keep evolving. How important is it that, from your experience, that you had to learn to work on the business, not just in it, to take it to where it is today?
that's the hardest problem I think for any entrepreneur is getting to a stage where you can work on the business versus in the business. And most entrepreneurs, they get tied up in the business, right? Let's face it, you
Yeah,
you know the product, you built the business, you're the one who came up with the concept, you're the one who put the processes in place. Um, so you're the one who's ultimately responsible for the company. So like when you first start hiring that first salesperson and like, oh, you should have said it this way, you should have like you get too far into the weeds. Um, Somebody I spoke to one time, I asked them that. I said, "You look, you're the developer of this company, so I'm the developer of lead developer of my company. How do you get to the point where you hire people to take over and trust they're going to do the job?" And he goes, "Look, the way I look at it this way is if I hire somebody and he is 80% as good as me, let's assume my ego is that big and I hire somebody and he's not better than me. Like, because they always say hire somebody better than you, right? Let's say I can't find somebody better than me in my mind, right? They're out there, but in my mind, I don't find them. And they do 80% as efficient as I am. So that means in developing code and developing large scale network infrastructures, you might need 20% more hardware. He goes, so it costs me an employee who's getting the job done at 80% efficiency, and I got to spend another 20% more on hardware to cover the inefficiencies of his code. Well, now I could take my time and go do something else. It's like a book I'm reading by Dan Martell called Buy Back Your Time, right? It's how can I spend money so that instead of working on that code that somebody else can be doing, I can go work on something more important, working on the business that's more important to growing the business. So you got to get to that stage where you got to find good people, right? They're out there, find good people. Ideally, hire somebody better than you. Um, and again, that's tough when, in most entrepreneurs' mind, they are the best person for the position, right? Because they're the one who came up with the concept and the idea. But hire people that are going to do the job that you can trust in taking over that aspect of the business. Train them up right, coach them along the way, but get to the point where you can trust they're going to do the job. And worst case scenario, if going back to my example, if they're 80% efficient, that's still taking your time that you didn't have to do that task anymore. Now you can go work on something more important. And that's kind of how it is. In fact, um, I was looking at something the other day because right now I find I spend most of my time in email. If I look at my across my day, because I'm like I want to have that zero inbox, and When I leave here for the at the end of the day, it's a zero inbox, and of course, I walk in the next morning, it's 150 emails.
Exactly.
You got to weed through the garbage, and you got to get through down to the stuff where it really needs your attention. So I'm debating on hiring an assistant to just handle my email. And in this book, Buy Back Time, it says if you have a task that can be done by somebody else, whether it's an executive assistant, it's a developer, it's whatever. But if you can hire somebody to take over a task and buy back your time, then you can put your time on something that you don't have somebody to do at that point, which is more important. Otherwise, you become like, so in other words, let's say if you have a task that an assistant can do, but you're insisting on doing it, that makes you the assistant.
Yeah,
You got to think
that's
twice
true.
about where you spend your time.
So in essence, what I'm hearing is like, as a business, we gotta, if we're gonna grow our business to an, if an empire is your goal, you got to value your time to manage it effectively. Like you said, where if I could have my assistant do these things, so it frees up my time to be focused more on the more strategic, important priorities that are gonna, position my company to either raise capital if needed. Maybe you're going to introduce a new product or service. All of those things will require more of your focus than if you're getting bogged down in the day to day of the things that can be delegated appropriately. So yeah,
Yeah, think of it this way. What would Elon Musk do?
yeah,
He's going to be
yeah,
filtering his inbox for junk email. You
yeah,
know, no, he's going to have somebody do that for him so that his time, which is very valuable, can be spent on more valuable aspects of the dozens of companies that he's running. But, here's a guy who works 7 days a week, 12-hour days. Most of us don't want that lifestyle, right? But where he spends his time is like key. So if you understand where he spends his time, you can understand at a smaller scale what you should be doing with your time.
exactly, exactly. No, it's great. And if you could share, I'm sure along the over the 30 years your businesses have tested your patience, and because again that a lot of the things that are beyond your that are outside your control, like what's going on in the industry, customers, prospects, whatever that may be, change in technology, that type of thing. Talk about like the importance of, I guess, from your perspective, of how we have to be patient with this process.
Well, the best way for me to describe that is, when you're looking at something, you come up with a great idea and you're like, okay, I'm going to need this, 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 and you have to get all this stuff done. So the plan is made and you want it done yesterday, right? Every one of us has come into a situation where it's like you got the goal, you know exactly what you want to do, and it's going to take 3 months, and you're like, you get impatient with the process, and it's like you got to trust in the process, like build the process out, know how it's going to take, and anticipate that time. But like I get all like we have a new fraud find that was uncovered, and this is happening on a weekly basis. So this is the psychology that goes through my mind. We found a very unique fraud find, or my chief product officer found a unique fraud find tail end of last week, and but he's in the middle of a project, so um, he says, "All right, I got to finish this project before I can start working on that." And I'm impatient because I'm like, I want to solve this fraud before it becomes a big problem, which is important. But it just showed itself. So I want everything done immediately, but there's only so many hours in a day. There's only so many, people that are capable of solving those problems. And he's the one who's found that one. So he's the one who's going to be focused on fixing it. So we spoke today and I'm like, okay, so where are we getting with this? Like I'm the impatient one. And he's like, I'm wrapping up the other project today so I can start on it either later today or first thing tomorrow. I'm like, awesome. So you just got to get in the habit of knowing that things are going to take time. But if you plan it out, and then I think some of the times, if I know, okay, if I plan it out and also plan the date of completion, then it lets me relax a little bit more, but I'm still impatient. I still want it done yesterday. It's just life, right?
Yeah,
Anytime somebody says, how's your business growing? It's growing, not fast enough, right? We're all in that same boat. Like,
we're
okay,
all in the same boat. Yeah.
doing 50% growth a year. That's awesome. Can we ratchet it up to 60, 70%? Like you always want more than you have, which is the entrepreneur mindset. You need to have that mindset because if you're complacent with like, hey, we grew 50% last year, I'm happy.
Yeah,
You're not an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs,
exactly.
I did 50, I can do more. Like there's always time in the day to do more. You can always find another hour here. You can always find another way to get another client there.
Yeah. And if you could share, like, you had a vision, you had a purpose, you fulfilled a challenge that needed to be addressed back at the time, and even today that you continue to do with what you do with the Neura. What are some of the things that you could share for business owners or those aspiring to start a business that are important each and every day that you either rely upon or you develop to keep showing up each day as a leader and owner in your business?
Well, first off, I love what I do, right? If you don't love what you do, find something else, right?
Yeah.
So that's important because if you don't enjoy coming to work, oh my God, it's Monday, I got to go to work, wrong mindset and wrong company, and you need to change that.
Every day's, yeah, to me it's Sundays. Every day's the same day to me because I love what I do.
Yeah. So you have to love what you do. And I had a colleague of mine who had a business, and he was just like every time I saw him, he was just down in the dumps, like just life sucked. And it was like, oh my God, you've got to find something else you like doing. And for him, the way he was built, he hated the responsibility of being responsible for his staff. He hated the responsibility of being like the buck stops here, so to speak. He hated that responsibility. So he ended up finding a job in a very different industry and loved it. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, and he was kind of like downgrading himself to say, I was an entrepreneur, I was running my own business, but I wasn't happy. Now I'm working for somebody else and I'm happy. And I'm like, all that matters in life is you're happy, right? We all have different areas of life that we fit into. And it doesn't matter whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're an employee for a company, just find happiness. Because if you, like I said, they always say, if you're happy in what you do, you don't work a day in your life, right?
Yeah.
And that's the important thing is you have to. So for me, one thing is I love what I do. When I walk in the door, I'm happy. When it's Monday morning, I get up, I'm like, okay, great, we get to work today. Like I just that's how I am. And that's how most entrepreneurs are. They really enjoy. I mean, Elon Musk is not working 7 days a week, 12-hour days because he hates it.
And like you said, and it's not just about the money. It's about, again, it's something that draws upon your skills, your strengths, and it fulfills a purpose that you feel like that really that deep down really aligns with who you are.
Yeah,
I can
like
totally
I
I can
enjoy
relate to that 100%.
Yeah, I like to enjoy walking into the office and getting the staff excited for the day's work and just watching them grow, watching them come up with ideas on their own and watching the company start to evolve where I'm getting more and more out of the business and more on the business. And that just gets exciting. And so you have to have different goals and challenges that excite you in order to continue to be exciting and in order to be followable.
Exactly.
You want people to
Wow.
follow you, you got to be excited about what you do.
No, absolutely, 100%. No, just powerful stuff. Now, as we get near the end of the show, I want to make sure people get to know you. But before we do that, like, what would be just like in a 30 seconds, any final advice that you'd give to someone listening? That's that what even if you didn't think it was possible, it is if you put your heart and soul into it. Anything else you want to share to provide some encouragement to those that want to build their empire?
I always tell people when you're looking at potentially putting the business together, it's scary because you have a full-time job. You may be debating on quitting the job to start this new business, and you're like on the fence, should I do it? Should I not do it? And I told this to a family member of mine, and I told him, look, if you decide not to do it and take the safe road, it's going to be fine. You'll have a good life and everything will be fine. But you're going to always wonder in the back of your mind, what if? I would
Yeah,
rather you take that leap of faith, try it and fail. Ideally, hopefully try it and succeed, but try it. And the worst case scenario, worst thing that happens is you fail and you go
fail.
back
You learn from
to,
mistakes
but
and
at
failures.
least
Yeah,
you can say you tried. At least you can
yeah,
say you took the effort, you took the swing. You this way you have no regrets in life. Like I said, it's life's too short. If you're thinking about something, as long as you have a good plan, don't jump in and like, okay, I just quit my
yeah.
job.
Don't just jump into some business without planning. Yeah, I
Make a
advise not do that.
make a calculated effort to decide the right direction. And then once you have a good game plan that you personally believe in, and then run with it.
Wow. Well, Rich, this has been a wonderful time that we've spent on in this episode with you. We definitely going to have you back for another show in the future. Want to make sure, again, first of all, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to be with us here today. Also, the rest of the team here at Tal Radio, and also as a shareholder at Touch of Life Foundation. I would like the listeners, how can they get in contact with you? What are you up to, and anything that you'd like to share or provide them?
Yeah, best place to get me is LinkedIn. Rich Kahn, I'm easy to find. Or rich@anor.io is my personal email address. Like I said, I unfortunately still handle it personally. That may change in the next month or two, but in the meantime, I still handle it personally. So I'm easy to get in touch with. But yeah, right now we've been focusing on. I mean, the growth of fraud has been out ridiculous.
Yeah.
Uh, just last year, we have a paper coming out announcing how much fraud was last year alone. And last year, $140 billion was stolen from advertisers last year by fraudsters.
Wow.
So we're
Wow.
talking about a massive, massive industry,
Yeah.
not slowing
No,
down.
it's so important. There are entities like yourself out there that are, like the true, we could say superheroes of in this space that are, combating the bad and helping, advertisers make sure that their ad dollars are well spent and aligned with their true audiences and not these imposters and hackers out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you again. We'll definitely have you on a future show. And listeners, we want to thank you each and every week joining us here at Business Influencers. We are committed each and every week in bringing in subject matter experts like Rich in to share their words of wisdom and insights and personal experience to help elevate your business and level of influence to the next level. If you have any questions, we encourage you to reach out to Rich directly, connect with him on his email, also on LinkedIn. You could also reach out to us and we'll connect you to him as well. All that information will also be in the show notes and how you can get in contact with Rich and his company at Anura. They're doing amazing things. Till then, everybody, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next week. Take care.